Joining us for the balance of the hour, comedian, radio host, conservative, author, louderwithcrowder.com, joins us. And over the years, I've seen a lot of Steven Crowder's video reports where he goes out and just shows the totalitarian absurdness of the people that call themselves leftist. I don't even call them liberals. Thomas Jefferson was a liberal. More freedom, more private property, keep more of your money, self-defense. These people are the opposite. They want to live in like some type of cult land. And we have Starbucks now saying they're going to cancel, at least in stores, their Race With Us, re-education camp garbage. Hillary came out last week, of course, and said we need to go to fun camps to be forced to discuss this. Black Lives Matter, bust into restaurants everywhere and get in people's faces. It's clearly to stir up division in the nation because that's all Obama and the globalists have to offer. Black unemployment's doubled under Obama, so let's just get everybody fighting with each other while the establishment loots us. Again, Steven Crowder joins us, louderwithcrowder.com. Excellent YouTube site, excellent radio show. I wanted to get him on to discuss some of his latest antics to show the absurdity of what's happening with Planet Fitness. And I wasn't aware of Planet Fitness, I'll be honest, and how bizarre they were. I didn't know that if anything's a re-education camp in the making, it's Planet Fitness. So I want to get his expert take on this because it turns out I spent like an hour or two last week on his YouTube site watching all these different videos with his run-ins with them and others. So, Steven, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Alex. And listen, I know that we don't agree on everything, but I appreciate you extending a friendly invitation, and I'm glad to lock arms on the things in which we do agree.
Absolutely. Now let's get into it here. Your take, I mean, I call it an attempt to turn the country into a re-education camp. What do you call trying to turn retail stores, gyms, you name it, into ninnying, control freak, hen-pecking dens?
Well, I don't know if I'd go to use that many adjectives, but listen, Planet Fitness, it's funny. One of my first videos ever was about Planet Fitness, and it had nothing to do with the transgender sort of re-education that's going on right now. It was about the fact that it was billed as this judgment-free gym, right? And everything that's done under the guise of, oh, it's judgment-free. It turns out they're usually judging a group of people more harshly than anyone else. And at Planet Fitness, that's athletes. So if you actually look at Planet Fitness and what their rules are, no deadlifting, there's no squat rack. It's designed to actually judge and exclude people who are serious about training in order to include people who literally, they give you pizza and Tootsie Rolls at the gym and tell you that you're beautiful and you're perfect just the way you are. And listen, I believe that all of God's creatures are beautiful and all are loved, in the eyes of the Creator. But let's be honest, some of us need to lose some weight. Some of us need to improve ourselves, and we don't need a pat in the back to tell us to wallow in our slothfulness. And that's what Planet Fitness does. And then, of course, they took it one step further recently where, you need to know, Alex, they're incredibly discriminatory, right? They say judgment-free. They kicked out a lady who complained. So this is a story for people who don't know. I'm sure you've covered it on this show, but I'll give a quick recap. A man who wants to be a woman went into Planet Fitness, used the women's locker rooms. And if you see the picture, it looks very much like you would expect a man in a dress, kind of like when Bugs Bunny would put on the dress and the other bunnies would think he was attractive. It looked like that. It was pretty silly. One woman complained, felt uncomfortable. They revoked her membership. They kicked her out. They've also kicked out people for wearing pro-life T-shirts. They've kicked out people for looking too strong. So this video that I did was really just not so much exclusively about the transgender issue, but pointing out the fact that whenever you claim to be inclusive, at some point, everybody is excluding some group of people. So let's just be honest about it.
Well, my issue is that if a guy can't pass as a woman, he thinks he's a woman, he better not go in the women's bathroom. This looks like a 350-pound guy in a dress. I mean, he looks like the guys in drag from Police Academy. I mean, of course, if I had a beard and walked in the women's restroom, I go, I'm a woman, but I'm not obviously a woman. It's just ridiculous.
Well, yeah, and they always trot out science. That's the big, if you look on, again, louderwithcrowder.com, people can go read the comments. Liberals are going, well, or leftists, I think you're right in your terminology, are saying, well, you're just denying the science. Well, what science am I denying that if you're born a man or a woman, that you're a man or a woman? And of course, liberals and leftists always trot out the extreme examples, right? to make their case, people who are intersex or people who actually do have some sort of I guess, genetic abnormality. I don't know if I can use the word abnormal because now, of course, transgender people make up 0.3% of population America, but we have to refer to everyone who's not that as cisgender.
Exactly. So when we come back in the next long segment, tell me why you think they're pushing this so hard. Now you did actually look a little bit more like a woman. I mean, not too much, but at least you're not 350 pounds. So still, you could tell you were a man, but I mean, come on. We'll be right back, ladies and gentlemen. Stay with us. Steven Crowder is our guest, well-known comedian, actor, radio host, author, louderwithcrowder.com. He had mentioned as a proviso when he first came on with us, and maybe before he leaves us, we'll discuss it, about, hey, we don't agree on everything, but I'm glad to come on about this. So I guess some of the neocons or kind of rhinos out there will probably henpeck him because it's all this social engineering that he would dare come on the Conspiracy Theorist show. Let me guess, Stephen, you've probably criticized me before. I don't know. I'm just guessing for saying 9/11 truth or something. But that's only because the media misrepresents what I'm saying. There are radical Islamicists. That's going on. I was interviewing the embassy heads and special forces commanders and everybody else that al-Qaeda was being protected. Look at how we funded ISIS and al-Qaeda. I mean, I've really been vindicated on all those fronts. Now, I'm going with a hunch here, but let me guess. I bet you've been critical of me or something in the past. I don't care if you have been. I love it. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, listen, of course I have. But you're also, by the way, syndicated on my my wonderful home station in Detroit, Wham. Yeah, but I've been critical of lots of people. When I worked at Fox News, I was getting in hot water all the time for criticizing people there. What I would love to see is let's get you and Glenn Beck and Sean Hannity and Michelle Malkin in a room, and let's just all hug it out, because the barrel of the gun that we are looking down right now, Alex, is so huge that I'm just done with the infighting. But yeah,
I agree. No, exactly. Yeah. I mean, Glenn Beck does a lot of great work. You do great work. Michelle Malkin does a lot of great work. Everybody. We just need folks that are saying Ted Cruz isn't perfect. Well, compare him to Hillary Clinton. Yes, he is perfect.
Well, compare anybody to Hillary Clinton. I think they're going to look like a beacon of light and hope. And listen, and I've gotten flack for saying I don't know that Ted Cruz is necessarily the guy. I love Ted Cruz. Obviously the issue is, would I love for him to be president? Sure. Do I think he can win? I'm not sure. And some people will go nuts and say that I'm a rhino if I say that. It's one of those things where you can't please everybody. We certainly disagree on a lot. I do think that, like you said, if someone goes into your arguments on some of the issues, I think you're more reasoned than the media necessarily portrays you to be. It doesn't mean that I can't have a disagreement, but
I love it. Absolutely. I think it's awesome. That's what it's all about. It's political correctness that tries to act like it's bad if people debate or disagree. That's what makes good radio to begin with.
No, I think you're right. And I think we've both been accused of being part of a Zionist gulag on YouTube. So there's a kinship in that.
Exactly, or working for the Vatican or space aliens. Again, Steven Crowder, louderwithcrowder.com. Excellent videos, great radio show. Steven, expanding on this, though, we've got all these athletes now competing in powerlifting, in Olympic races, and now the liberal groups are saying, or the socialist groups are saying, you've got to let men compete as women. I mean, this is an overthrow of reality. South Africa's runner makes Olympic debuts 3 years after Gender Storm.
Right. Well, it's funny you mentioned that, because I actually wrote a column while I was at Fox News years ago about Fallon Fox. And I know you're good friends with Joe Rogan and Eddie Bravo. And Joe Rogan, listen, leans to the left, obviously socially. Fiscally tends to be more conservative. He's another free thinker with whom I agree on a lot and disagree on a lot. He even took a stand on the Fallon Fox issue and said, man, that's an advantage. Fallon Fox, for those who don't know, is a mixed martial arts fighter, was a man, I believe, fathered a child his entire life, and then in his late 20s or 30s decided he wanted to be a woman, and now beats the crap out of women in a cage for a living. And, the analogy I used was this, and people got really mad, right? Because they trot out science and say, well, there's no real
yeah, let's let Mike Tyson say he's a woman and go into fighting women. I mean,
yeah, well, listen, we had Chael Sonnen on my show last week, and he said, listen, I've fought in the UFC. I've fought for the title 3 times. He said, I can, if I were not on a public radio show, I could give you names of men. I don't know if this is true. This is what Chael Sonnen told me, who would cut off their genitals to win the strap, to win a championship. Now, that's what he's saying. We don't necessarily understand the psyche behind these athletes and the extremes they'll go to. But the point I made on Fallon Fox is this. Christiane Santos, Cyborg is her nickname. She's one of the top female fighters in the world. At one point, she was suspended, and I believe stripped of her title, but she was certainly suspended because they found out that she had used steroids, okay? At one point in her career, I don't even believe it was in that current fight, but they found out she had used steroids and she was suspended. Fallon Fox has used steroids her whole life. They're called balls. So if we're going to act as though it's not an advantage.
Are those what Hillary has? I'm sorry.
Oh, geez. There you go. Well, Alex said it. People send him your hate tweets, not me. But listen, a woman on steroids, okay, for example, let's take a natural woman, okay, and then a woman on steroids, on performance-enhancing drug. That woman doesn't enjoy the advantage over a natural woman that I enjoy. To give you another example, let's take Arnold or Ronnie Coleman or any of these walking human pincushions, right? These bodybuilders who are any steroid they can possibly use, they put in their body. They don't enjoy the hormonal advantage over me as a steroided out freak, as a man, that I enjoy over a normal woman, let alone the bone structure.
It's bone structure. It's the muscles, the tendons. A male brain is more aggressive. Male brains make quicker decisions in a fight. It's just well known that you can even remove your testicles. You're still a man genetically. And then a lot of these transvestites aren't even removing their testicles, and they're now allowed to be in the UFC beating up women, or they're allowed to run in the Olympics. You're going to have no one in the Olympics soon but men that have had their genitals cut off.
I don't know if I would go that extreme. By the way, Fallon Fox wasn't fighting in the UFC, was fighting in other organizations.
Whatever, fighting in those same thing, yeah.
I understand your point. Well, it is interesting if people say it, if that's the science and it's settled, right? That's what anyone says on the left. If they disagree, well, the science is settled, whether it's climate change or now whether it's the transgenderism thing, which, by the way, I need people to understand, this has not come out of a place of hate. I mean, I've worked as an actor since I was 12. I didn't go to school for many, many days, because I was out on set. So I worked in an industry that was pretty liberal. You can bet that I've had transgender people working on my face, or my whole life I've been around it. It's nothing new to me.
You're not attacking anybody, but the issue is it's a tiny percentage of the population. We're bombarded with it, and then it's not fair that a guy can say he's a girl in boxing or UFC or any other MMA. It's just, that's what I'm saying. Why are they so special? What's behind the agenda pushing it?
Well, I don't know if it's necessarily behind an agenda. I don't think, and this is where I would say that you and I sometimes disagree, right? I don't tend to believe that people get together and set agendas a lot of the time. Sometimes they do, right? There are some people who are proactively evil, I would say. People like the Ahmadinejads of the world, or Nancy Pelosi, depending on how you look at it. But I wouldn't say that necessarily in this case. I think what's happened is the bar has just been moved so frequently that people just accept it. The transgender thing is really relatively new. And by the way, we're having a lesbian guest on my show here this week or next week, I believe. And a lot of lesbians and a lot of feminists, by the way, are offended by the transgender push. You have some liberal feminists who believe that it's a product of patriarchy, that it's unfair to women for a man to decide that he wants to be a woman and act as though he understands the plight of women and the rights that they don't have. I'm not saying I agree with them. And then you have lesbians who say that they feel bullied and that they're being marginalized. So it's not like it's settled even on the left, but you're told that, hey, if you believe, for example, I watched, not that long ago, maybe about a year and a half ago, Tyra Banks had a little boy coming out who was 7 years old and saying, referred to his penis as his birth defect. She's going, your birth defect, your penis, and they're going to chop it off for the kid because he wants to be a girl. At what point do we say, hey, hold on a second? It might be healthier with a 7-year-old who, by the way, 3 minutes ago was wiping his boogers on the couch, and we're now allowing him to make sexual decisions for the rest of his life. It might be healthier to maybe see if this kid is confused.
It might be healthier to not be, look, Death Education, 2020 did a special on this in 1997, but they introduced it at Columbine first federally and then other schools, and within a couple of years, there was a doubling and a tripling of suicide. It's the same thing. You start teaching 5- and 6-year-olds about transvestites and trannies and she-males and hermaphrodites, the kids end up getting confused. And then they have the supermodels on TV saying, like you just mentioned, we'll get rid of your birth defect. It sounds like it's an attack on the standard genders of the mammal species, male and female. I think that's what it is.
Well, yeah, and that's where, the left loves to accuse people of conservatives of being simple, right? Yet they grossly oversimplify, for example, the issue of same-sex marriage. I'm not even talking legally, if you want the government to recognize it or not. As a matter of fact, I'm pretty libertarian on the issue. The problem I have, and by the way, it's more complicated than that even legally. Where my home country in Canada, you have pastors who are now put in jail for hate speech simply saying they won't marry members of the same sex. So it's more complicated than just love versus hate. That's what I like to teach people about, and I like to open up that discussion.
Sure, political correctness is a tyranny. It's being used to control language and bully people. I mean, and I want you to be able to continue, but since you mentioned it, I thought you were joking. We have the video. I'll play it for TV viewers. Radio listeners, just Google eating pizza while working at Planet Fitness, and we've got footage of this with the guy. I mean, the guy looks like he weighs 400 pounds, and he's actually working out his back in a back machine while eating pizza that is from Planet Fitness. But don't worry, the purple plate matches the decor.
Right. Yeah, exactly. By the way, it is horrible branding. If I'm just going to speak from a design perspective, purple and yellow, every time I go, I mean, I can't imagine an epileptic training at Planet Fitness. It'd be like watching an anime cartoon. Yeah, well, listen, the idea, even goes back to, like I said, same-sex marriage. We're not talking about the legal issue, but what you are saying with that, okay, and this is something that's very important here, and I hope people understand where I'm coming from. It doesn't come from a position of hate. You're saying that men and women are fundamentally interchangeable. You're saying that two daddies can offer everything that a daddy and a mommy can. You are saying that two women offer everything that a man can. And I don't agree with that premise. I don't accept that premise. But here's the problem. When you start down that road, well, you've made men and women fundamentally interchangeable. You now can't say, okay, we're at a fork. We have to stop here when you get to the transgender issue. You have to be accepting of any and all preferences regarding what people want to do.
Well, now in Europe and in Australia, they're trying to legalize pedophilia, saying that, that's the next frontier.
Well, it's legal where I'm from. Where I'm from, the age of consent in Quebec is 14 years old. Now, again, we want to be accepting of people, right? We want to be accepting of everything, apparently. Well, you tell me that a relationship between a 55-year-old man and a 15-year-old boy is just as sexually healthy as a 25-year-old man.
Absolutely.
And a 25-year-old
Look, we're supposed to be tolerant. That's true Thomas Jefferson, liberalism, not just anything and everything goes, because we know a year-old baby shouldn't be having sex with a 50-year-old. Biologically, it's not designed to do that. It is perverse. What we're saying is there are limits. We have to make decisions in this universe, and we're being told by the so-called leftists, no, there are no limits, except we'll arrest you if you read out of the Bible in Canada, these passages. So really, I think it's coming to a crisis point, though. It's gotten so obvious, so ridiculous. The Starbucks program blew up in their face. Everything Michelle Obama pushes is blowing up in their face. I think we're starting to hit bottom here. What do you say?
I think there are four winning issues for conservatives. And I know, now, Alex, do you consider yourself a conservative or libertarian? What do you...
I'm a libertarian constitutionalist, pro-human that wants our civilization to survive. But I'm into self-defense. I'm pro-life. So I'm lined up with conservatives on most issues.
Right. And my problem with the word libertarian is, you've got Glenn Beck, then you've got Bill Maher, and all of them claim to be libertarian. So the waters have been muddied. So I just say conservative, but most people would consider me more libertarian. I can't remember. There was there are four winning issues. I think you're right here with conservatives. Okay, there are four issues where leftists have really overreached, and you're seeing some rebound effect. Guns. Even with my generation, and I think call it the video game generation, they want to fire off cool guns. It's a losing issue for liberals. Feminism. Feminism has overreached because you now have a generation of young girls who don't believe that being treated like women is anti-feminist. And then free speech. There's been a real overreach from the left on free speech, where I think you're even getting some rebound on college campuses where kids are rebelling against the political correctness. And I can't remember what the fourth one is. I'd have to get to, Islamic terrorism. Yeah, Islamic terrorism. By the way, when I used to do these videos on YouTube, you can go back on 2008, 2009. Almost all of the comments were, this is Islamophobic, this is hate speech. And I've noticed a turn even on YouTube, a super liberal platform of people going, yeah, okay, this is something we have to get a handle on. It's not the same as other religions out there.
Well, why did the Muslims, and I'm not anti-Muslim, but I'm anti-radical Muslim, why... Like they've even had that David Cross movie came out where at the end the guy goes, I got all this from Alex Jones. Alex Jones, I hate blacks, Jews, and Muslims. What is this thing where the left claims that if you're against radical Islamicists, it's like a form of racism, when the radical Islamicists are sexually mutilating women, enslaving people, killing everybody, and you never hear any feminists criticize them? Why are radical Islamicists such darlings to the left?
Well, it's a good point, and I don't think one can expect feminists to be consistent on anything. I mean, where feminists, they talk about supposed rape culture when men are dragging their tallywhackers into women's locker rooms at Planet Fitness. Where are the feminist anti-rape culturists there? With Islam, you're right. The silence is deafening. I'm not anti-Muslim. I've talked about this, okay? To give you an example, I am a Christian. I'm very honest about it, even as a libertarian, but I personally am a Christian. Not all Christians are perfect, okay? But I believe Jesus was. And I think anybody who's not even a Christian could look to whether they think it's a fable or not of Jesus and say, okay, that's a pretty good example. Not all Muslims are terrorists. Sure, Muhammad was. Muhammad, the prime example, was someone who did kill, who did behead, who did beat his wife, who did call for the deaths of Christians and Jews. So my problem isn't necessarily with all Muslims. But if you look at ISIS and you look at the Muslims who maybe aren't going as extreme as them, you have to say, okay, who is closer to emulating Muhammad? My problem is not with Muslims. My problem was with Muhammad. And that, of course, is hate speech and politically incorrect to say. But I've read the Quran and I've studied Muhammad, and the guy was a terrorist. So let's have an honest conversation about that.
Well, he certainly did conquer the areas around him by the sword, but then people would argue that's what happened in this country. My issue is that they're using radical Islam to basically take our basic rights to protect us, but they're not protecting us. And then radical Islam's getting bigger and more out of control than ever. And it's just a nightmare situation. Shifting gears back into when you got in drag to go into Planet Fitness to illustrate how absurd it is. What do you think's driving Planet Fitness to create such a bizarre environment, and how does that tie into what Starbucks is doing? I mean, it was so surreal to send our cameras into Austin, Starbucks last week, where they were handing out newspaper checklist of, how you're a racist and all this stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, anybody with a brain knows that's going to create racial division. It's not going to create unity.
Yeah, well, I went into Starbucks the very next day, and they said, how do you take your coffee? I said, I take it Ving Rhames. Just to see how they react. Yeah, listen, I mean, it's one of those things. I won't relent. I won't even give it credence, the politically correct thing, the race thing. Listen, here's the crazy thing too, Alex. I'm substantially younger than you are. I say that not as an affront, just to talk about the generational gap here. And I was raised in Canada, okay? So I was raised in not only a post-racial America, but Canada. I will tell you this. There has never been more racial tension in my lifetime. Now, I wasn't alive, obviously, for the Civil Rights Act. I wasn't alive for the Detroit riots like my father, who was raised in the bad part of Detroit that Eminem tries to claim he's from as the phony that he is. I didn't experience that. So I was raised in a post-racial America. But today, it is worse than ever. Today, I have kids with whom I went to high school, who we were friends with, now saying that there's an established form of racism and the system is stacked against them. And that's a new thing for these people who I've known my entire life.
Yeah, that's their new identity, is that they've been abused and that something's happened to them, and they're talking to some, Eastern European, I've seen this on the street, who has no history of enslaving black people, and it's just crazy. Final segment straight ahead with Steven Crowder. We're going to get his take on where he thinks all this is going. Did you know Planet Fitness, folks, has alarms in it? If you make any noise and then they send people over to henpeck you? I'm going to do about 5 minutes overdrive and talk to Doug and 11 Bravo and a few others that have been holding for a long time. Steven Crowder's our guest. We're almost out of time today. Don't forget, we just launched the latest high-quality supplement, InfoWarsLife.com. That's Winter Sun, organic vitamin D3, very strong, very concentrated, and your purchase isn't just great for you and your body and your family, but it helps fund this operation. So I want to thank you all for your support. Winter Sun, available right now at InfoWarsLife.com. Please support our local affiliates as well and support their local sponsors and spread the word. Louderwithcrowder.com is his website. Steven Crowder, we got 5 minutes. You've got the floor to give your other points about where you see this society going, what you think about the election, and where you think it's going with this obsession. You think our national domestic products, not even propaganda or military hardware now, but just ninnying about what politically correct group we're in. You ended the last segment talking about people who now their whole identity is being in a persecuted group.
I have to be careful, obviously, the way I word that, because these are good people. They're certain. I just think these are people who've been misled. You know, it's funny. I've been writing this book for a while, and I only have 2 books in my lifetime that I want to write. Sorry. And I remember when I pitched it to one publisher, they took it and they said, "Well, we need it to be more doomsday theory-ish. It's too funny. It's too positive. It offers too many solutions." So, to give you an idea, the one chapter in there are 2 kinds of leftists in this country. There are the manipulators, the propellers, right? The James Camerons, the Hillary Clintons, the Barack Obamas, okay? People who I think know better on a lot of issues, but proactively try and manipulate certain people in the public. Now, that's a very small percentage of leftists. I think a majority of people who vote Democrat, who go what we would call liberal, are people who don't know any better, who take the default political position as given to them by culture, by these leftist propellers, the entertainment industry, the media, right? So I think it's important to distinguish between those 2. Because if you're dealing with someone who's proactively lying and manipulating, I think you need to make an example of them. But I think a lot of these people who are going along with what they've been taught their entire lives through public schools, university, and what they hear in the media in Hollywood, those are people whose minds can be changed. And I think that's kind of what you're seeing with Planet Fitness. Listen, I don't think the franchise owner in Midland, Michigan is out there trying to break down the barriers of sexual norms. I don't think so. But I think he's been given a piece of paper saying this is our policy from someone who does want to try and subvert culture, and he has to go along with it because he doesn't know any better. So while I do believe in standing up for what we believe in, and I do believe in being bold, I also think it's important to understand that there are some people out there whose minds can be changed, and they're not necessarily being proactive with the manipulation, and it's important to make that distinguishment.
Sure, there are a lot of liberals out there who really mean well, and they don't realize that they're working for a bizarre cult of control freaks that want to totally enslave this country. I mean, look at the power grabbing going on right now by Obama, and the Republican leadership's doing nothing. The internet, the borders, just everything. I mean, what do you think the next shoe to drop is in the power grab?
Gosh, man, you know, I don't know. The way I see it is if people who are paid to make political predictions all over the news get it wrong about 90% of the time, you know, me in my little home studio here with a bag of potato chips haven't got a shot. So I stay away from the political predictions.
Did you hear about FEMA to deny funds to states that won't accept the global warming religion?
No, I didn't. I don't know.
That's just out today. That's just out today. I'm not kidding.
Well, I'd have to read up on that, Alex. I don't mean to tell you that I don't believe you. I just don't know about it, so I'd hate to give an opinion.
No. I hear you. Did you know that George Bush was photographed with a plunger bombing the World Trade Center? That's a joke, man.
I don't know, Alex. This is my first time on the show. You can have me back to talk.
I want to have you back. Hey, you're doing a great job with the videos. They're really entertaining as well. So I like the fact you're having fun with it. Steven Crowder, loudwithcrowder.com. Thank you. Infowars.com is our site. Overdrive starts now, but I'm coming back with your call. Stay with us. See you later, Steven.
The average person's life is filled with unexpected challenges. Unlock the energy it takes to defeat these daily beasts with super male or super female vitality, specifically designed to assist the body in regulating proper hormone balance to create superior vitality in males and females. Supercharge and conquer your world at InfoWarsLife.com or call 188-253-3139.